Your child won't stop crying. It's the middle of the night. You are exhausted down to your bones. You have no idea what's wrong. For modern parents, this is one of the most desperate feelings in the world. You reach for your phone. You search for answers. You call someone. For 99% of human history, your ancestors had none of that. No pediatrician, no formula, no hospital 10 minutes away. And yet somehow, children survived. Not just survived, they were raised to become hunters, foragers, storytellers, and eventually parents themselves. The question is, how? How did ancient humans actually keep their children alive in a world that was trying constantly and creatively to kill them? The answer will probably make you rethink everything you've been told about good parenting. Let's start with what survival actually looked like for a newborn in the ancient world. Infant mortality was brutal. We know this from skeletal evidence from burial sites across Europe, Africa, and the Levant. Researchers have found that roughly 30 to 50% of children born in prehistoric hunter-gatherer groups did not survive to age 5. That number sounds devastating. It is. But it also means that half or more did survive. And they didn't do it by accident. Your ancient ancestors had a system. It was informal, distributed, and older than language itself. And it was built around one central idea that modern Western parenting has almost completely abandoned. No one parent was supposed to raise a child alone. In the 1970s, anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy began studying the evolutionary origins of human parenting. What she found fundamentally changed how scientists understand why humans are the way they are. She called it cooperative breeding. The idea is simple, but radical human children evolved to be raised by a group, not a pair. Among the Kungsan people of the Kalahari, studied extensively by anthropologist Melvin Connor, infants were held, carried, or in direct physical contact with a caregiver for nearly 90% of the day. But that caregiver wasn't always the mother. It was grandmothers, older siblings, aunts, unrelated women in the group, sometimes even men. Connor's fieldwork revealed that a single infant might be passed between 5 or 6 different people in the span of a morning. This wasn't neglect. This was the design. The technical term for these helpers is allomothers, individuals who are not the biological mother, but who assist in raising the young. In every traditional forager society studied, allomothers are essential. Without them, child survival rates drop significantly. With them, children are better fed, better protected, and as Hrdy's research suggests, possibly better socially and cognitively developed. Think about what that means for your brain. You didn't just evolve to attach to one caregiver. You evolved to read multiple faces, multiple emotional cues, multiple styles of comfort and communication. Your infant brain was shaped by a rotating cast of adults, all investing in your survival. That's why you can read a stranger's emotions in 200 milliseconds. That's why your eye whites are visible, unlike every other ape, so others can track exactly where you're looking. You were built for a village, literally. Now let's reconstruct what a day actually looked like. You are born into a group of roughly 25 to 50 people. They move seasonally, following game, following water, following the ripening of fruit and seeds. Your mother nurses you on demand, not on schedule. There is no schedule. Breastfeeding in hunter-gatherer groups typically continues for 3 to 4 years, sometimes longer. This isn't just about nutrition. It suppresses ovulation, naturally spacing births roughly 3 to 4 years apart. Your mother's body is managing the population density of the group. You sleep against a body. Always. Solitary infant sleep, putting a baby down in a separate space alone, is essentially a modern invention. Archaeologist and sleep researcher Carol Worthman, who has studied sleep practices across multiple non-Western cultures, found that infant solitary sleep is virtually unknown in traditional societies. You slept on a body against a chest wrapped in animal skin, surrounded by the sounds and warmth of other humans. At around 6 months, you are introduced to pre-chewed food. Your mother, your grandmother, an aunt. They chew plant matter or lean meat and transfer it mouth to mouth. This sounds alarming to modern ears. It is, in fact, one of the oldest forms of supplemental feeding in primate evolution. Saliva contains enzymes. The caregiver's microbiome seeds your immune system. There is emerging evidence that this practice transferred beneficial oral bacteria that supported early immune development, though researchers like Maria Gloria Dominguez Bello, who studies the infant microbiome, are still untangling exactly how significant that transfer was. By the time you can walk, you are rarely alone, but you're also rarely with adults. This is one of the most surprising findings from childhood studies in forager societies. Children in these groups spend most of their day in age-mixed playgroups, not with parents, not in structured learning, but with other children ranging from toddlers to young teenagers. Peter Gray, a research professor at Boston College who has studied play and learning across cultures, found that these mixed-age groups function as the primary site of skill transmission. Older children teach younger children, not formally, through play imitation and gentle competition. You learn to track animals by tracking your friends. You learn to use a digging stick by watching your older sister use one. You learned what plants were poisonous by listening to the stories told around the fire, the ones that always began with someone who didn't listen and always ended badly. That last part mattered more than you might think. Fire was the classroom. Every evening when the day's foraging and hunting were done, the group gathered. This wasn't a ritual. It wasn't scheduled. It was simply what happened when darkness made movement dangerous and the fire was warm. Polly Wiesner, an anthropologist at the University of Utah, spent decades studying the Jew/Hwansi people of Namibia and Botswana, and recorded the content of their conversations during day and night. Daytime talk was mostly practical: food tools, complaints, logistics. Nighttime talk was almost entirely stories. Wiesner found that 80% of evening campfire conversation was devoted to stories about distant people, mythological beings, moral dilemmas, social rules. These weren't entertainment, they were the curriculum. Children sat at the edge of the fire and absorbed them. The stories told you who to trust, what to fear, how to behave, when someone broke the rules, and what happened to those who did. This was how values were transmitted across generations without writing, without schools, without any institution at all. Now here is the counterintuitive twist. For most of human history, childhood was not considered a protected, innocent phase to be prolonged and shielded. It was the first stage of full participation in community life. Children weren't kept away from the real world. They were introduced to it gradually through observation, imitation, and the almost invisible scaffolding of the allomother network. By age 10 or 11, children in most forager societies were contributing meaningfully to the group's food supply. Not because they were exploited, because contributing was how you learned, how you built identity, how you earned the respect of the people whose approval you needed to survive. Modern developmental psychology tends to treat child labor as harm, and in industrialized contexts it often is. But the distinction matters. Contributing to a community that feeds and protects you is fundamentally different from extraction by strangers for profit. One builds a person, the other hollows them out. What your ancestors understood, what we seem to have largely forgotten, is that children need to feel needed, not just loved, needed. The village wasn't just a support structure for parents. It was the environment that childhood was designed for. When Sarah Blaffer Hrdy reviewed the evidence across primate evolution and human anthropology, she concluded something stark. The modern nuclear family, two parents, isolated, raising children largely alone, is not the ancestral norm. It is a historical anomaly, and a very recent one. The loneliness that many parents feel today, the exhaustion, the sense that they are supposed to know things no one taught them, the creeping fear that they're doing it wrong is not a personal failure. It is the predictable result of asking a species that evolved for cooperative breeding to raise children in isolation. You were never meant to do this alone, and neither for 300,000 years did you have to. You wake up in the night, your child won't stop crying, you are exhausted down to your bones, but in the world your body was built, for you were never the only one who heard it.